Hi. You know, music has changed a lot over the years. From that simple zither sound to a little more modern sound like... maybe like that there. But you know, whether it's the sound of the electric guitar or the sound of the steel stringed acoustic guitar like this Martin here, or the sound of the Spanish style guitar, commonly called the classical guitar, or a little rarer version of it like this National steel bodied dobro. It's a nice sound. The guitar has come a long way. And in our day and age, it's probably become the most popular instrument ever, and for good reason too. It's light and it's portable, it's easy to play, it's got a nice full wide range to it. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is what makes up a good guitar. Not necessarily what makes up a good sounding guitar, because as you've heard, the sounds can be gotten in different ways and the tones can be gotten in different ways. But what makes up what a guitarist call the action, or what makes up a good playing guitar. So let's start off with some basics here. The string is the common thread for all of these guitars. When it's plucked, its vibration is sent down to either the soundboard on, say, the acoustic guitar here, or the resonator on the National steel string, or to the pickups, say like on this electric over here. But the string is the most important thing here. If the string doesn't have room to move, if it doesn't have room to travel in its vibration, the sound is going to be muddy and it's not going to be clear. So the important thing is to give that string plenty of room to move, plenty of clearance. So okay, the string has got plenty of clearance to move. What happens once we start to fret it? All that clearance that we've given the string is just going to start to get in the way now. All that distance that we've given the string to move is going to start to cramp up our fingers. The strings need to be close enough to the fingerboard to where it's easy to play, and the strings need to be also far enough away from the fingerboard to where they'll ring clearly. So that's like the first of a few compromises that need to be made on a good playing guitar. So let's examine what goes into a good playing action, okay? The first thing that we need to consider is the neck. And the neck, unless it's like a few of the new modern aluminum exceptions, is made out of wood. And anybody who's ever had like a door stick on them on a humid day, I'm sure you've had that happen to you, can tell you that wood is affected by humidity changes and climate changes. It's also affected by age and how the wood will cure along the grain lines and kind of twist along the grain lines that it has. In the case of the guitar, the poor little guitar neck is also affected by how many pounds of string tension are constantly pulling on this thing, right? So there's like maybe 30, 40, 50, depending on the gauge of string that you use, pounds per string. You add that up and that's like a few hundred pounds of constant string tension trying to bend this neck every minute that it's strung up. And this poor little wooden neck won't last very long over the years like that. So what some guitar manufacturers have tried to do, they've installed steel reinforcement rods, and some have taken the shape of like this truss rod here. This is a truss rod. And in the case of the Gibson system, they've laid this in before the fingerboard is attached, and they've carved the slot that the rod lays into at a slight arch, so that once the rod is laid into this slot, it's curved in the center. So imagine this with me, if you will. Attached at one end, curved in the center, and at the other end it's attached with a threaded nut. Now once I start tightening this nut, this rod is going to want to straighten out. And since the metal is much more rigid than the wood is, it's going to take the wood with it. And these are the things that are going to affect like string tension and things like that. So there are a couple of different designs of this truss rod. The purpose of them is all the same. This is a Rickenbacker system. It works on a little split rod here. The purpose of them is to try to combat the effects of string tension and the aging and the humidity process also. Here in Arizona we have a special problem like in the summertime when we use a lot of our evaporative coolers. The humidity will rise up indoors and the neck wood will actually swell up. The truss rod is there to kind of combat those things. Like in the wintertime in the northern states where you use a lot of dry heat, it's used to combat those because the wood will change. Okay? So once we've got the neck reasonably straight with the rod, let's get a little better idea, first of all, of what this rod is actually doing. I'm going to take this G&L here and sight down the fingerboard. What I'm doing is I'm grabbing it by the headpiece here, and I'm kind of closing one eye, and I'm eyeing down both sides of it from one end, from the nut end to the other end of the fingerboard, and I'm looking for two lines here. The first line is the line of the strings, and the second line is the line of the fingerboard. Now this particular neck here has a slight bow in the center of it, a slight bump. Now this is where the truss rod comes in. I'm going to take this little adjustment wrench here, and I'm going to loosen the rod, and watch how the strings get further away from the neck at that center point there. Watch how that bump seems to disappear, and the neck is going to straighten out. There, can you see that? Now I'm going to keep going with this so you can just see which part of the neck is being affected by the truss rod. I'm going to put a dip into it, or a slight concave into it. Okay? Can you see that? Now I'm going to raise it back up. It's a good idea when adjusting these truss rods here to do it like when the string tension is not on it. So loosen your string so that you're not working against the string tension. It's an easy thing to do on some guitars where the metal that they use is not really the best, where you can strip the little threaded threads up in here if you're working against the string tension. So loosen the strings up, tighten it up to where it's past the point of you know where you'll need it, and then put the string tension back on it, and then watch it as you're loosening it, right? So you can see exactly how straight it's going to be with the string tension on it. Okay? So we've got the neck straightness down. We can go on to the next important thing in a good playing guitar, and that is for the frets to be all in line with each other. Now you don't want any high frets or low frets. You'll pick these things up when you're playing, and you'll find that some positions start to buzz out, or you're not getting real clear notes in particular positions. This is probably due to the frets being uneven. Now in that case, what we do is we mill the fingerboard, or we mill the frets on the fingerboard. This is a fret mill here, and what I was doing at the beginning here was milling this guitar here. And I'll show you what I'm doing to it. I've straightened the neck out before, and I've tapped out the nut so that I don't chip it when I run the file across it. And I'm going to lay this flat file on top of it and run it along the whole distance of the fingerboard. And what I'm doing is I'm taking material off the top frets. I'm taking material off the high frets, so that once I get down to having filing marks on every one of these frets, I know that the level of them is all the same. And that's the way to check if you've got even frets after your fret mill here. Like while you're milling, you're looking for fret markings, filing markings on each one of these frets here. And the next step, after we file them, is to take our pieces of sandpaper. Usually start off with like a 220, go to a 320 and a 400. And what we're doing is we're taking out the scratches that we put in with the fret file. And they're kind of deep, so you'll need to start off with like a rougher 220 grit and then work your way up. Before we do the final sanding though, we'll need to put a crown back on the fret. Since we've taken the fret file and flattened out the tops of them, we need to put a nice peak back into the fret. And this is done with a fret crowning file. Or you can do it with like a 3-cornered file or a small miniature file. The purpose of it is just to take the edge off each side of the fret. You'll run it along here like so. And then you'll take the other side and run it along the other side. And the idea of it is just to get a nice round curve back into it. You'll go back with your sandpaper, and sometimes it's a good idea to just file the edges of where you've crowned the fret also. After that, we take our steel wool and we polish our frets up. And what I like to do after the steel wool, after the frets have been shined up nicely, is just take a little bit of lemon oil or a heavier linseed oil and kind of put it on the fingerboard and let the oil soak in and then wipe it off. In dry climates like we have here in Arizona, the wood tends to dehydrate a lot and it's not real good for it. It tends to crack and chip. Okay, so we've got the frets nicely in line. We've got the neck nice and straight. The next thing we need to consider in a good playing action is the angle. Now, what do I mean by angle? Watch as this rod changes. Now, this is an angle here, this is an angle here, and this is an angle here. Now, each one of those will determine how well the guitar will play. Okay? Let's get a little better idea of how critical this angle is. I'm going to take this G&L here. And it has a handy tilt adjustment on the back of it here. Now I'm going to take the Allen adjustment screw, and if we can get a close-up on this, you can watch as the strings get further away as I loosen this adjustment. Can you see how the strings are getting further away? Now I'm going to tighten it up the other way, and you can see how the fingerboard just comes up to meet it. Right. Can you see that? This is a very critical area here. This neck heel area determines what kind of an angle you're having on your neck. And the angle needs to be like, say, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 degrees different than the angle of the string, or the straight line of the string. There needs to be that difference there. If the strings are parallel, if the fingerboard and the strings are parallel, the guitar won't play. So there does need to be a slight bit of a tilt happening there. That's adjusted with a tilt adjustment. On some of them, we have what's called a bolt-on system. I'm going to take this apart here so you can see what that looks like on the inside. The neck is actually screwed into the body and attached that way. And it's taken off by just loosening the screws, taking the neck off like this. And if this needs to be changed, if the angle needs to be changed here, we'll take a shim and we'll run it and tape it along here. Put the neck back on it, and then screw it back into place and tighten the strings up back to pitch. There we go. And then recheck it and see how you've affected the angle just by shimming it like that. Most necks, though, don't have like handy little tilt adjustments like that, or bolt-on systems. Most necks come attached permanently at the heel here with a dovetail joint under the fingerboard, okay? When they put these on at the factory, presumably they put them on at the right angle. Sometimes, though, during the life of a guitar and the abuse that it gets, it will show signs of like cracking here at this heel joint. If you're considering at this point buying a guitar, check out this area right in here where the neck meets the body, this heel joint area. This is a real critical area. If you see like cracks starting and you notice that the strings are hard to play like at the 12th or 14th fret, you've probably got a neck separating and a pretty hefty size repair in your future if you're going to buy the guitar. Okay, necks that are attached that way, if they're loose, they need to be taken off and glued back on at the right angle. There's not much you can do like unscrewing it or adjusting the tilt that way. It's a kind of a big repair that a qualified repairman will do, but he'll also charge you for it because it does take a little while to do. So we've got the angle covered, and we've got the straightness of the neck covered, and we've got the line of the frets covered. Those are the most important things. Once those things are taken care of and you know what the story is on those, you can go to your minor adjustments, which are like the saddle adjustment and the nut adjustment.